The van pulled up to the curb outside the school. The driver waved, said her mom had sent him. The little girl stepped closer, but just as she reached for the door, the patrol dog moved. He blocked her with his body, then growled, low, unshakable. No one knew why, until investigators looked into what was inside that van and who the man really was. Before we dive in, drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're watching from. And if you enjoy real feeling animal stories like this, check out our other channel where the heroes are cats instead of dogs. Make sure you're subscribed over there too. The link's in the description. Let's get into it. It was the first warm Monday in April, and the crossing guard rotation had returned to normal after spring break. At the corner of Lincoln and 8th, just 2 blocks from Southridge Elementary, a patrol car idled next to the flashing school zone lights. Officer Melissa Krantz leaned against the front bumper, arms crossed, sunglasses reflecting the stream of backpacks and sneakers crossing in front of her. Her partner Bramble sat at her side, a 5-year-old Belgian Malinois with a black saddle coat and amber eyes. He looked more like a wolf than a cop's dog, but he didn't bark, didn't growl. He just watched, focused, a statue with a pulse. They weren't technically needed. Southridge didn't have a record for danger. But Bramble had been part of a new community trial, pairing trained canine units with school resource officers on morning patrols. More presence, less panic, the memo said. It was supposed to build trust, reassure parents. The dog was meant to be a mascot with a badge. And for the first 3 weeks, that's all it was. Bramble greeted kids with slow tail wags. Let the bolder ones scratch behind his ears. He even knew not to lunge when toddlers reached for his snout with cracker-sticky hands. Melissa had started to feel like a prop handler more than an officer. She didn't mind. After 11 years in uniform, a few quiet weeks with coffee and crossing duty was the closest she'd come to peace in months. "Morning, Officer Krantz," called Ms. Diaz, a kindergarten teacher who always wore earrings shaped like whatever they were studying that week. Today's dangled like tiny DNA strands. Science unit, then. "Morning," Melissa replied, raising her coffee in salute. "Bramble was hoping for dinosaurs this week." Mrs. Diaz laughed. "Tell him next month. We're doing the human body now." But that Monday morning, at 7:56 a.m., something shifted. A silver van rolled slowly past the edge of the crosswalk. No plates on the front. Rear windows tinted almost black. The van stopped, mid-turn, like the driver had forgotten the way. Melissa made note, casually reaching for her radio, not to call it in, just to log the tag when it passed. But before she could read the numbers, Bramble stood. No warning, no whine, just rose from his seated position like a lever had been pulled. "Easy, boy," Melissa murmured, resting a hand on his back. His fur was rigid. He was staring, locked in, not at the driver, but at a girl walking along the sidewalk, maybe 7, pink backpack, braided pigtails, heading straight toward the van, which had now pulled up beside the curb. And then Bramble lunged, not toward the van, toward the girl. In one smooth motion, he broke from Melissa's grip and placed himself between the child and the open sliding door, just as a man leaned out and beckoned her forward. Melissa's heart slammed once. "Back!" she shouted, running forward. The man saw her uniform, froze, then slammed the van into reverse and tore off down the road. Bramble didn't chase. He stood firm, body blocking the girl, growling so low it sounded like a motor running underground. Melissa reached them seconds later, pulling the girl close. "You okay?" The girl was trembling, but nodded. "He said he was my uncle," she whispered. "He said Mommy sent him." Melissa didn't reply. She was already calling it in. The van was gone in under 10 seconds, but Officer Krantz had already keyed in the partial plate and flagged it for dispatch. Bramble stayed planted beside the little girl, panting now, not aggressive, just alert. His growl had stopped the moment the van did. "I need your name, sweetheart," Melissa said gently, crouching down. "Do you know your teacher's name?" "Miss Penny," the girl said, voice small. "I'm in 2nd grade. My name's Aria." Melissa radioed the school, gave Aria's first name and the classroom. Within 2 minutes, Principal Mendoza jogged across the lot, panic written all over his face. He wrapped Arya in his arms without hesitation. Her mother's name is Jocelyn, he told Melissa. Single parent. Never mentioned an uncle. She walks Arya herself every day unless something changes. But she always calls the office. She didn't today? No call, nothing. Melissa nodded once. Get her on the phone, now. As Mendoza led Arya inside, Melissa walked Bramble back to the cruiser, clipped his leash to the back hook, and gave him a soft pat. You good, buddy? He didn't wag, just blinked slowly, still staring down the road where the van had gone. When dispatch radioed back 5 minutes later, they had news. The plate didn't match the make and model. It belonged to a farm vehicle in another county, likely stolen. And then came the second call. Jocelyn Rivera, Arya's mother, had been found unconscious in her garage. A neighbor had called 911 after hearing her car running for too long with the garage door closed. She'd been dragged out by paramedics and was now in stable condition. But it hadn't been an accident. She had a bump on the back of her head. An officer from the responding unit confirmed the scene. Back door forced open. No signs of robbery. Purse untouched. Keys missing. It wasn't carbon monoxide poisoning. It was staged. Melissa stood frozen as the update came through. Her gut dropped. And this wasn't random. The man in the van had gone to that house and taken the keys. Maybe even used Jocelyn's phone to text her daughter's teacher or to fake a reason she'd be late. He knew Arya's route. He knew her school. And he'd waited. Which meant, Melissa realized with a cold shiver, this wasn't someone following impulse. It was planned. She sent out a bolo for the vehicle. Officer units spread across the nearby intersections. County Sheriff's Department joined within the hour. But the van had vanished like smoke. At Southridge Elementary, Officer Krantz asked for access to the school's entry logs. Sure enough, Jocelyn had used the school app at 6:14 a.m. to say she'd be late dropping Arya off, except Jocelyn was already unconscious by 6:14, which meant someone else had her phone. Someone who knew how to fake her tone, her casual phrasing. Someone who'd likely studied this long before the attempt. Melissa stood at the edge of the school lawn, looking out over the same crosswalk she'd stood by that morning. That van hadn't slowed because the driver was lost. It had slowed because Arya was walking right on time. And without Bramble, she would have stepped forward. Just like the man expected, the realization hit hard. This wasn't someone from within the family. This was someone who'd pretended to be. Melissa sent a text to Officer Granger at dispatch. Need all child abduction records in the county. Last 24 months. Focus on elementary school age. Cross-reference false relative pickups. Within the hour, she had her first match. A girl, 7 years old, different school, same method. Told a man with a mustache said he was her uncle. Tried to get her into a dark SUV. She'd run, scared, no camera footage, no license plate. But the sketch looked hauntingly familiar. Same shape to the jaw, same thick brows, same glasses, different girl, different town, same tactic. And now, thanks to Bramble, they might actually stop him. The school resource office had never seen so much movement in one afternoon. Within 2 hours of Bramble's intervention, Southridge Elementary transformed from a sleepy suburban campus into the hub of a multi-agency search. Melissa's desk, usually sparse except for a worn coffee mug, and Bramble's water bowl, was now covered with printouts, bolo notices, and a half-drunk bottle of Gatorade. Her laptop pinged every 5 minutes with new emails, but it was the sketch comparison that haunted her. The 2022 case, 7-year-old Chelsea Myers, wasn't solved. The man had approached her at dismissal time, had spoken calmly, had said her aunt was sick, that he'd been sent to pick her up. Chelsea had gotten as far as putting her hand on the van door before her older brother ran out to stop her. There were no prints, no security footage, no resolution. Melissa enlarged the sketch on screen, then pulled up the Southridge van footage from this morning. What little there was. Most of the license plate was obscured, but the van's front had a dented bumper and a crooked passenger mirror. It was something. A knock at the door pulled her attention. Deputy Ramos, from the county unit stepped in with a folder. Thought you'd want this first. She opened it. Incident reports from a different precinct. One stood out immediately. Attempted pickup at a Montessori school 3 towns over. Girl was 6. Man waited in the lot with the engine running. When a staff member approached, he claimed to be a rideshare. No name in the app logs. Drove off fast. Melissa tapped the file. Same description. Close. Glasses. Red flannel. Clean shaven this time. Getting smarter, she muttered. Then something in the report's margin made her stop. The teacher who reported the incident had mentioned the van smelled like something. Paint thinner. Melissa sat back, a memory clicking into place. That smell had come up once before, in a hazmat incident at a mall where a man had spilled a small bottle while walking past a security kiosk. Claimed it was for model building. Something about restoring vintage toys. Walked out before anyone thought to get his ID. She pulled up the mall's incident log from the shared database. There he was. 5'10", white male, medium build, baseball cap, red hoodie. Security had logged it as a non-event. Just a spill, cleaned up, no photo. But the timing fit. It was 3 days before the Montessori attempt. He was scouting, testing security response times. Learning the patterns, Melissa's radio crackled, pulling her from the connection she was forming. Unit 7 to Officer Krantz. Bramble just soft alerted, near the bus loop. Kid lingered near the curb after missing their bus. Suspicious vehicle spotted, but it drove off when our unit rolled up. Her stomach flipped. She was already moving, grabbing her jacket. Bramble rose from his bed in the corner, instantly alert, sensing the change in her energy. Details? She responded, already halfway out the door, Bramble at her heel. Silver minivan. Not the same model, but similar profile. Tinted windows, temporary tag, couldn't read it. Bramble was seated near the flagpole when she arrived, his posture relaxed but vigilant. His tail thumped once against the concrete when he saw her. Calm, but with an undercurrent of tension, the way he always looked after he detected something concerning that had passed. Where? She asked, scanning the street beyond the school fence. Officer Daniels, a younger cop who'd transferred from traffic patrol last year, pointed down the street. Silver Dodge Caravan, plates covered with what looked like mud, maybe deliberately, circled twice. Bramble went rigid when it passed the second time, then barked once when it slowed again near the kindergarten playground. No child had been approached. But a 6th grade teacher had noticed a man watching from inside the van. Phone out, not filming, just watching. Like he was studying the dismissal pattern, learning which kids left alone, which ones had parents waiting, where the blind spots were. Same description? Melissa asked, her voice tight. Hard to say. Baseball cap again. Sunglasses this time. White male, that's all we got. Melissa made her decision. She pulled every school pickup photo from the last month from the security footage, sorting through faces, cars, anything recurring. Parents waiting, staff members leaving. Background details most people wouldn't notice. At 3:17 p.m. on Tuesday the week prior, a parent had captured a shot of her son in front of the school sign for social media. In the background, a silver Dodge Caravan, passenger mirror slightly off angle, a man's shadow just visible through the glare of the windshield. Melissa zoomed in, hope flaring in her chest. The outline of the glasses matched. The shape of the jaw, the way he sat, slightly hunched, like a predator waiting. She grabbed her phone, called Ramos. We've got a pattern. This guy's been circling campuses for weeks. I'm sending you the images now. Ramos asked the obvious question. Why now? Why Arya specifically? Why today? Melissa glanced down at Bramble, now sniffing near the bushes with exaggerated care, as if trying to recapture that elusive scent he'd detected earlier. Because he thought today would work. Her voice was hard, certain. Everything lined up. Mother neutralized, school notification fake, child walking alone. He had it all planned. And it almost had. That night, Melissa sat in the passenger seat of her cruiser, scrolling through old case notes. The same van, or at least a similar one, had been reported outside a youth soccer complex 6 months ago. Another time behind a daycare parking lot, always leaving before contact, always circling, never quite matching a specific vehicle registration. Until today, Bramble had changed the pattern. By Thursday morning, the school was under the soft lockdown procedures. Not the kind with blaring alarms or drawn shades, but quiet ones. A few extra deputies posted near the bike racks. New protocol for anyone picking up a student without ID. Teachers trained to keep the front office looped in if a car parked across the street for too long. It was precautionary, but everyone could feel it, the shift in energy, the concern beneath forced smiles. At 7:45 a.m., Melissa got the call she'd been both hoping for and dreading. Possible match. Silver van. Parked near Franklin Elementary. Man waiting inside. No pickup registered. Local PD requesting K-9 support. She clipped her radio to her vest and whistled once. Bramble was already by the door, his tail low but steady, ready to work. They arrived at Franklin 9 minutes later, lights off to avoid spooking the suspect. The van was still there, idling beside a red fire zone strip. A middle-aged man in a denim jacket sat inside, tapping at his phone, occasionally glancing up at the children streaming toward the front entrance. He didn't look dangerous, but then again, none of them ever did. Melissa approached from the passenger side, while the Franklin SRO, Officer Layton, covered the rear. She kept her movement casual, like she was just checking on an illegally parked vehicle. Standard procedure. Nothing alarming. She tapped on the window. The man looked up. Confusion crossed his features, then smoothed away into polite interest. He rolled the window down halfway. "Morning, sir. Can I ask why you're parked in a school zone during restricted hours?" "I'm waiting for my niece," he said. Calm, voice smooth as honey. "She's running late again." A small laugh like this was a common occurrence. Melissa kept her tone light, friendly even. "What's her name? Maybe we can page her for you." Emma Carmichael," he smiled. "5th grade, Mrs. Wilson's class." She radioed it in, waited, maintaining casual eye contact, noticing how the man's gaze occasionally drifted toward Bramble, who sat perfectly still beside her. Layton leaned in, voice low. "We've got no student by that name enrolled here." Office checked twice. The man's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. Barely a flinch. But Bramble caught it. The dog took one step forward, ears stiff, eyes locked. Melissa saw it. That subtle shift in Bramble's posture, half sit, tail frozen, shoulder tension rising. A soft alert. Not drugs, not weapons, something else. Something that made the hair on her own neck rise in response. She stepped back. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." He hesitated. Just a fraction of a second too long. A micro-expression of calculation crossing his features. Then he smiled and turned the ignition off. "Of course. Is there a problem?" As he opened the door, Bramble growled. Low, unmistakable. Not a threat, but a warning. Layton moved in, hand on his sidearm. "Keep your hands visible, sir." The man complied. But his calm had cracked. Just for a moment. Enough to show there was something behind the smile. Something cold, something practiced. Melissa cuffed him gently, not because he resisted, but because her gut told her if they let him go now, they'd regret it. Bramble remained focused on him, moving only to maintain position as the man was escorted to Layton's patrol car. "You've made a mistake," the man said, still eerily pleasant. "This is all a misunderstanding." "Then it'll be cleared up quickly," Melissa replied, her voice professionally neutral while her mind cataloged every detail of his appearance. The jacket, the watch, the shoes that looked new but were scuffed at the heel like they'd been deliberately aged. "We just need to verify a few things." At the station, the man identified himself as Russell Green. No warrants, no priors, ID from Tennessee, temporary tags on the van, legally issued. He insisted he'd simply gotten the school names mixed up, said he was supposed to be picking up his niece from a different district, just a miscommunication, offered to show text messages that didn't exist, apologized profusely for the confusion, asked if he could call his sister to clear things up. But there was something off, too cooperative, too confident, the way his eyes never quite showed fear, even when they should have, the way he kept his hands perfectly still on the table. like someone who'd practiced controlling nervous tells. Melissa leaned over the interview table. Who is Emma Carmichael? She's my brother's daughter. They moved here 2 weeks ago, from Kentucky originally. We haven't been in touch much, but her father asked me to pick her up for a doctor's appointment this morning. No record of her in any district within 100 miles. He shrugged, the gesture too smooth. Maybe they used a different name. My brother remarried last year. Maybe she's using her stepfather's last name now. Bramble sat beside Melissa, silent now but vigilant. His eyes never left the man's face, not even when a detective entered with coffee. That kind of focus wasn't standard. It was the look Bramble got when he identified something specific, something that needed constant monitoring. They searched the van. What they found changed everything. In the back compartment, under a folded blanket, was a duffel bag. Inside, a collection of items that made every deputy in the room fall silent. Disposable gloves, a burner phone, turned off but still warm, a set of zip ties, candy wrappers of different brands, untouched, a small stuffed dog, well-worn, like something that had belonged to a child for years, and a printed map of 3 elementary schools, circled in red ink, Southridge, Franklin, and a third one, not yet visited. None of it was enough for formal charges, not yet, but it painted a picture, one that turned stomachs, one that hinted at plans beyond a single abduction. Melissa held the stuffed toy for a long time, unsure if it was meant as bait or memory. Whether it belonged to a previous victim or was designed to lure the next one. Either possibility made her fingers tighten around the worn fabric. Russell's story fell apart in the next 24 hours. The Tennessee ID was real, but stolen from a man who'd reported his wallet missing 6 months earlier. The van was rented under a false name with fraudulent credit card information. The phone had text history tied to an online forum that had been flagged by cybercrime units for discussions around child trafficking patterns, vague, obscured, but not meaningless. When confronted with these inconsistencies, Russell smiled again. Your dog's the only one who got it right, he said, voice soft with something like admiration. From the first moment, smart animal. Melissa said nothing, but her hand found Bramble's head, fingers sinking into his fur, drawing strength from his solid presence. Later, she walked Bramble behind the precinct through the alley where delivery trucks backed in during late shifts. The afternoon sun cast long shadows between buildings, and for the first time in days they were truly alone. You knew, she murmured, from the start, before any of us saw it. Bramble paused at a fence post, nose twitching, then sat quietly beside her, leaning slightly against her leg. Like he always had, like he knew something she didn't. The news didn't make the front page. There was no photo of the van, no mugshot, just a quiet bulletin from the sheriff's department. Suspicious individual detained in school zone, investigation ongoing. They kept it vague on purpose. No need to panic parents more than necessary, no need to give imitators ideas. But in homes across the county, parents began checking the locks twice. School counselors were briefed, bus drivers given photos of Russell Green. His case file was marked Monitor for Escalation. And Bramble? He didn't seem interested in any of that. He went back to his routine, morning patrols, afternoon walkthroughs, quiet evenings at Melissa's side as she finished paperwork. 2 days later, Officer Melissa Krantz returned to Southridge Elementary for follow-up. She had barely stepped out of the cruiser when a hand tugged on her jacket. It was the girl. Little Aria, the one Bramble had blocked. She looked different now. Not scared, but thoughtful. More serious than a 7-year-old should be. Her hair was in a single ponytail instead of the pigtails. She wore purple sneakers that lit up when she walked. A cartoon character lunchbox dangled from one hand. You're the dog lady, she said, her voice small but steady. Melissa smiled, crouching down to eye level. That's me. How are you doing, Aria? Aria looked past her, toward the vehicle. Is the dog here? Melissa motioned to the back of the cruiser. Bramble was sitting in the back seat, nose pressed to the glass, watching them intently. He didn't bark or whine, but his whole body seemed focused on the child. The girl stepped closer. Can I pet him? Melissa hesitated, then nodded. He remembers you. He's very gentle. She opened the door and Bramble stepped out calmly, stopping just in front of Arya. He didn't jump or lick, just stood quietly, waiting. Arya reached out slowly, her small hand trembling slightly. Bramble leaned forward and pressed his forehead against her palm, not excited, just present, like he'd been waiting. Then Harper whispered something that made Melissa freeze. He was going to show me his puppies. Melissa crouched, keeping her expression neutral despite the ice that suddenly formed in her stomach. Who was, sweetheart? The man in the van. Her voice was steady, too steady for a child. He said he had 3. Said they were sleepy. I was going to see them before I got on the bus. He said I had to come quick. Melissa kept her expression calm, though her heart raced. When did he tell you that? Tuesday, before you came, but the dog didn't let me go. Melissa felt her pulse spike, pieces clicking into place. This hadn't been a random approach. There had been previous contact. Did you tell your parents? Arya looked down at her light-up sneakers. I didn't want to get in trouble. He said it was a surprise. Melissa reached for her radio, keeping her movements slow to avoid alarming the child. Unit 4 to dispatch. I need child services on site at Southridge. We've got a verbal disclosure. The counselor arrived within 15 minutes. In a room with colorful posters and a small table, Arya repeated everything, calmly, as if it had happened to someone else. A man who called himself Uncle Russ, said he knew her from before, said her mom had told him she liked puppies, asked her not to tell anyone because it was a surprise, said they'd get ice cream after. The counselor gently pressed further, her voice warm but neutral. That's when Arya said something else. He had my name. Everyone in the room fell silent. He said it right. Not Arya, like the song, but Arya, like my daddy says it. How did he know? The counselor asked. I don't know. I thought Mommy told him. Melissa stepped out of the room and leaned against the wall, a hollowness opening in her chest. Her throat felt tight. Back at the station, she relayed the conversation to the lead investigator. He frowned, running a hand over his thinning hair. The guy had access to school rosters? Maybe, or social media. But this wasn't a random grab. He knew that girl. Not personally, but he'd studied her. And the dog knew. Melissa nodded. From across the parking lot, Child Services took Arya's statement and began a quiet inquiry into the school's digital security. The roster leak was unlikely. It hadn't happened before, but her mother's Facebook profile was public. Her name, her pet's name, even photos of her wearing a Southridge shirt with her bus number visible. No hacking required, just patience. The next day, a second parent came forward. Their daughter, another Southridge second grader, had mentioned a man asking if she liked puppies too. She hadn't gone closer, but the description matched. Thin man, denim jacket, big watch, quiet voice. That made 2, and both had names Russell had circled on his map. Melissa sat in the evidence room that night, staring at the duffel bag from the van, the stuffed toy, the zip ties, the map. Bramble lay beside her, head on her boot. You didn't just stop her, she said softly. You stopped the next one too. She thought about how easily it could have slipped by. A child walking toward a friendly man, a van parked just off school property, a story that never got told, and a patrol dog that wouldn't let it happen. Back on the street, life moved on. Parents showed up a little earlier for pickup, teachers checked their rosters twice, and kids whispered about the puppy man with the same tone they used for playground legends. But Bramble wasn't interested in legends. He was back on patrol. He sniffed hydrants, paused at alley corners, greeted cafeteria ladies who gave him bits of ham. And every time a child walked by, he lifted his head just to make sure. Do you think Bramble truly understood what that man was about to do? Or was he sensing something deeper, something none of us could see, but he refused to let pass? And what would you have done if your own child was about to step into that van? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If this story made you pause, even for just a moment, then give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and tap the bell icon so you don't miss tomorrow's video. These stories come out daily, and every one of them is based on a moment when someone, or some dog, noticed what the rest of us missed. And if you know someone who still thinks patrol dogs are just for sniffing bags or chasing suspects, share this with them. Maybe they'll see what true instinct really looks like. Two more stories are already waiting for you right here on the screen. Go ahead and click one, and I'll see you tomorrow, same time, with a brand new story.